What happens when one of the most respected actors in the world sits down for what should be a simple chat about his latest film, only to be ambushed by a host with an agenda? In just 31 seconds of one comment, Denise Welch destroyed what could have been a pleasant conversation and pushed Ralph Fiennes to do something he has never done before on live television. Walk off. Leave. Just get up and go. And the whole thing was caught on camera. Ralph Fiennes walked onto the Loose Women set that afternoon, looking calm and composed, like he always does. The man has played Voldemort, played a Nazi commandant, played some of the most intense characters ever put on screen. But in real life, he is known for being polite, thoughtful, and kind. He does not do drama. He does not create scenes. He just does his work and treats people with respect. That is his reputation. That is who he is. So when he sat down on that sofa, he was expecting a normal interview. Talk about the film. Talk about the character. Maybe share a funny story from behind the scenes. That is how these things usually go. The audience was excited to see him. The other hosts seemed pleasant enough. Everything seemed fine, normal, easy. But Denise Welch had other plans. Right from the start, you could feel something was different. The way she was looking at him, the way she was sitting. There was this energy coming from her that felt confrontational, aggressive, almost. Like she was waiting for her moment to pounce. And Ralph, being the professional that he is, just smiled and tried to keep things light. The interview started simply enough. One of the other hosts asked him about his new film. Ralph began talking about the project, about the director, about why he wanted to take on this particular role. He was giving thoughtful answers, the kind of answers that show he actually cares about his craft. He was not just promoting a movie. He was talking about art, about storytelling, about why these things matter. And then Denise jumped in. "I have to ask you something," she said, cutting him off mid-sentence. "Because I think a lot of our viewers are wondering this." Ralph stopped talking and looked at her, still polite, still patient. "Of course," he said. "Go ahead." Denise leaned forward. "You have played some really dark characters, really violent, really nasty people. Do you ever worry that you are glorifying that kind of behavior? That you are making evil look attractive?" The other hosts shifted in their seats. You could see them glancing at each other. This was not the question they had agreed on. This was not part of the plan. But Denise did not care. She was staring at Ralph, waiting for him to defend himself. Ralph took a breath. "I think that is a misunderstanding of what acting is," he said calmly. "When you play a character, especially a complicated or dark character, you are not endorsing their behavior. You are exploring human nature. You are trying to understand what drives people to do terrible things. That is what drama is. That is what storytelling has been since the Greeks." It was a perfect answer. Thoughtful, intelligent, respectful. But Denise was not satisfied. "But you must enjoy it on some level," she pushed. "You keep choosing these roles. You keep playing these monsters. There must be something in you that connects with that darkness." The studio went quiet. Even the audience seemed uncomfortable now. This was no longer an interview. This was an interrogation, and it was getting personal. Ralph smiled, but you could see the smile was becoming strained. "I choose roles that challenge me as an artist," he said. "I do not choose them because I identify with the characters personally. That is not how acting works." "But surely," Denise continued, not letting it go, "surely there is a part of you that has to access those feelings? You cannot just pretend. You have to find it somewhere inside yourself." One of the other hosts tried to step in. "I think Ralph is saying that actors use their imagination," she said gently, trying to redirect the conversation. But Denise talked right over her. "I am just saying what everyone is thinking," she said. "When you watch him play these roles, you have to wonder. You have to ask yourself where that comes from." Ralph was no longer smiling. "I think you are confusing the actor with the role," he said, and his voice was still calm, still controlled, but there was an edge to it now. "I am not the characters I play. Nobody believes Anthony Hopkins is actually a cannibal. Nobody believes Jack Nicholson is actually a psychopath. This is my job. This is my profession. But those characters live inside you when you are playing them," Denise said. "You have said that yourself in other interviews. You have talked about how you have to get into that headspace. So those thoughts, those feelings, they are yours. Even if it is just for a little while." Ralph stared at her. You could see him trying to decide how to respond, trying to figure out if this was worth engaging with. He looked tired suddenly, not physically tired. Tired of this, tired of being attacked for doing his job well. "I think you are deliberately misinterpreting what I mean when I talk about my process," he said finally. "And I am not sure why you are doing that." Denise laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, come on," she said. Do not be so sensitive. I'm just having a conversation. I'm just asking questions." "No," Ralph said quietly. "You are not. You are making accusations. There is a difference." The audience was dead silent now. You could hear every word, every breath. This was not fun anymore. This was not entertaining. This was uncomfortable. This was wrong. One of the other hosts tried again to salvage things. "Ralph, let us talk about the lighter side of filming," she said brightly. "Were there any funny moments on set?" But Denise was not done. "I just think it is interesting," she said, speaking over her colleague again, "that you get so defensive when someone questions your choices. If you are so confident in what you do, why does a simple question bother you so much?" Ralph looked at her for a long moment, and you could see something shift in his face. Not anger, exactly. Something else. Disappointment, maybe. Disbelief that this was actually happening. "It is not a simple question," he said, "and you know that. You are implying that there is something wrong with me because I play characters you do not like. You are suggesting that I am somehow damaged or disturbed because I am good at my job. And you are doing it on national television, in front of an audience, without any evidence or basis for what you are saying." Denise sat back, arms crossed. "I am not implying anything," she said. "I am just asking what everyone else is thinking. If you do not like the question, maybe you should think about why you do not like it." "Because it is not a question," Ralph said, and his voice was harder now. "It is an attack dressed up as curiosity, and it is beneath you, or at least it should be." The other hosts looked horrified. They were trying to smile, trying to keep the energy light, but they could not hide their shock. Nobody talks to Denise like that on her own show. Nobody calls her out. She is used to being in control, used to saying whatever she wants without consequences. But Ralph was not playing that game. Denise leaned forward again, and there was this look in her eyes, like she was enjoying this, like this was exactly what she wanted. "So you are saying I am attacking you?" she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. "I am just a talk show host asking questions, and you think I am attacking you? That seems a bit dramatic, do you not think?" "I think you know exactly what you are doing," Ralph said. "What I am doing," Denise said, her voice rising now, "is trying to have an honest conversation, but clearly you cannot handle that. Clearly, you need everyone to just worship you and tell you how brilliant you are. Well, I am sorry, but that is not how the real world works." Ralph shook his head slowly. "This is not an honest conversation," he said. "An honest conversation requires respect, and you have shown me none." "Oh, here we go," Denise said, rolling her eyes. "The poor celebrity cannot handle a tough interview. Do you know how many people would love to have your problems? Do you know how privileged you are to even be sitting here?" And that was it. That was the moment. Ralph stood up, just stood up, right there in the middle of the interview. He did not yell, he did not throw anything, he did not make a scene, he just stood up, very calmly, and started removing his microphone. The audience gasped. The other host froze. The cameras kept rolling. "What are you doing?" Denise said, and for the first time she sounded uncertain, like she had not expected this. "I am leaving," Ralph said simply. His voice was quiet but firm. "I came here to talk about my work. I came here to have a respectful conversation, but that is not what this is. This is you trying to humiliate me for your own entertainment, and I will not be part of it." "You cannot just walk off," Denise said, and now she sounded angry. "We are live. You cannot just leave." Ralph looked at her, and there was something in his eyes, not anger, pity almost. "I can," he said, "and I am." One of the other hosts stood up, reaching out toward him. "Ralph, please," she said, "let us just take a breath and start over." But Ralph shook his head. "I appreciate that," he said to her, his voice gentle again. "But I think we all know that is not going to work. This was a mistake. I should not have come here." He handed his microphone to a stage manager and turned to walk off the set. Denise was on her feet now too. "This is ridiculous," she called after him. "You are being ridiculous. All I did was ask you a few questions. If you cannot handle that, maybe you should not be doing interviews." Ralph stopped walking. Just for a second, he turned his head slightly, like he was considering whether to respond, and then he kept walking. Did not say another word, just walked off the set, through the studio doors, and he was gone. The audience did not know what to do. Some people started clapping, like they thought it was part of the show. Others just sat there in stunned silence. The other hosts were looking at each other, clearly panicking about how to fill the time. And Denise just stood there, watching him go, with this expression on her face that was hard to read. Shock, maybe. Or anger. Or maybe, just for a second, the realization that she had gone too far. The cameras cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Now, let us talk about what led to this moment. Because this did not come out of nowhere. This was not just a random clash between two people. This was the result of Denise Welch doing what she always does. Pushing, provoking, trying to create drama where there does not need to be any. Ralph Fiennes is not a difficult person. Everyone who works with him says the same thing. He is professional. He is kind. He is serious about his work. Yes, but he is never cruel or demanding. He treats everyone on set with respect. From the director to the person bringing him coffee. That is just who he is. So why would someone like that walk off a talk show? Why would someone so famously polite and controlled just get up and leave in the middle of a live broadcast? Because Denise Welch was not interested in interviewing him. She was interested in tearing him down. From the very first question, she was trying to catch him out, trying to make him look bad, trying to suggest that there was something wrong with him for being good at playing complicated characters. And when he would not take the bait, when he kept responding with intelligence and grace, she got more aggressive, more personal, more insulting. She questioned his integrity as an artist. She questioned his character as a person. She suggested that he was damaged, that he was dark, that he was somehow dangerous. And she did all of this in front of a live audience and millions of viewers at home. Why? Because that is what she does. That is her brand. Controversy, conflict, drama. She does not care who she hurts or who she offends, as long as people are talking about her, as long as the clips go viral, as long as she stays relevant. But Ralph was not going to play that game. He was not going to sit there and let her insult him just because she has a platform and an audience. He was not going to smile and nod and pretend everything was fine when it very clearly was not. So he left. And in doing so, he did something incredibly powerful. He showed that there are limits, that you do not have to accept being treated poorly just because someone has a microphone. That walking away is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. Think about what she said to him. Really think about it. She accused him of glorifying violence. She suggested that he must have darkness inside him to play the roles he plays. She implied that he was disturbed, that he was damaged, that there was something wrong with him as a person. And when he tried to explain his craft, tried to talk about the difference between an actor and a character, she mocked him. She laughed at him. She told him he was being too sensitive. Imagine being in his position. You are one of the most respected actors in the world. You have trained for decades. You have dedicated your life to your art. You have been nominated for Academy Awards. You have performed Shakespeare on the greatest stages in the world. And you sit down on a talk show, expecting a normal conversation, and instead, you get accused of being mentally unwell because you are good at your job. How would you respond? Would you sit there and take it? Would you smile and laugh it off? Or would you stand up and say, "No, this is not okay. I will not be part of this"? Ralph chose the latter. And good for him, because what Denise was doing was not journalism. It was not even entertainment. It was bullying. Pure and simple. She was using her position as a host to attack someone who could not really fight back without looking bad. She was counting on him being too polite, too professional, too concerned about his image to call her out. But she underestimated him. When he stood up and took off that microphone, he was not being dramatic. He was not throwing a tantrum. He was setting a boundary. He was saying, "I deserve to be treated with respect. And if you will not give me that, then I will not stay." And the other hosts knew it too. You could see it on their faces. They were embarrassed. Not because Ralph walked off, because Denise had pushed him to that point. Because they knew she had crossed a line. Because they had to sit there and watch it happen, knowing they could not really stop her without causing an even bigger scene. One of them tried to intervene, tried to redirect the conversation, tried to ask him about something lighter, something easier, but Denise talked right over her, because it was not about the interview. It was about Denise being in control, Denise being the center of attention, Denise proving that she could say whatever she wanted, to whoever she wanted, whenever she wanted. Except this time, it backfired because Ralph did not give her what she wanted. He did not argue. He did not yell. He did not give her a dramatic moment that she could use for clips and promos. He just quietly, calmly removed himself from the situation, and that was more powerful than anything he could have said. Think about the accusations she made. She said he must enjoy playing dark characters, that he must connect with that darkness on some level, that those thoughts and feelings, even when he is acting, are his. This is nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. Does she think Daniel Day-Lewis actually had polio when he played the lead in My Left Foot? Does she think Meryl Streep actually survived the Holocaust when she made Sophie's Choice? Does she think Christian Bale actually was Batman? Of course not, because acting is not about being the character. It is about pretending to be the character. It is about using imagination, emotion, technique, and skill to create a believable performance. It is about exploring human nature in all its forms, including the parts that are difficult and dark and uncomfortable. That is what great actors do. They do not shy away from complexity. They do not only play heroes and saints. They play real people, flawed people, sometimes terrible people, because that is what makes drama interesting. That is what makes stories matter. And Ralph Fiennes is one of the best at this. His performance as Eamon Goeth in Schindler's List is terrifying because it is so real, so human. You can see the evil, yes, but you can also see the weakness, the insecurity, the pathetic need for power. It is a brilliant piece of acting, and it has nothing to do with who Ralph is as a person. But Denise did not care about that. She did not care about his craft or his process or his art. She just wanted to make him look bad. She wanted to create a moment, and when he would not give her that moment, when he kept responding with thoughtfulness and intelligence, she got nastier. She accused him of being defensive. She said he could not handle tough questions. She compared his problems to those of regular people, as if being successful means you should accept being mistreated. This is a classic manipulation tactic. When someone calls you out for being rude or inappropriate, you accuse them of being too sensitive. You make it their fault for not being able to take a joke, for not being able to handle the heat, for being too fragile or precious or entitled. But Ralph was not being fragile. He was being self-respecting. There is a difference. Fragile would be crying or shouting or making a big emotional scene. Self-respecting is saying, "This is not acceptable," and removing yourself from the situation. And that is exactly what he did. When Denise said, "You cannot just walk off," she was revealing her true mindset. She believed she had power over him. She believed that because he was a guest on her show, he had to sit there and take whatever she dished out. She believed she was entitled to his time, his patience, his tolerance of her abuse. But she was wrong. Nobody is entitled to that. Not a talk show host, not a journalist, not anyone. You do not have to sit there and be insulted just because someone has a camera pointed at you. Ralph understood this, and he acted on it when he said, "I came here to have a respectful conversation, and that is not what this is." He was stating a simple fact. He was not being demanding or unreasonable. He was simply pointing out that the basic standard of respect had not been met, and without that, there was no point continuing. The other host who tried to get him to stay, who asked him to take a breath and start over, she understood what was happening. She knew Denise had gone too far. She was trying to save the interview, save the segment, maybe even save Ralph from the headlines that would inevitably follow. But Ralph knew better. He knew that staying would only make things worse. Denise was not going to suddenly become respectful. She was not going to apologize or change her approach. She was going to keep pushing, keep provoking, keep trying to get a reaction. So he left. And in doing so, he won. Not in a petty way, not in a gotcha way, but in a fundamental, important way. He won because he refused to be a victim. He refused to let someone else control the narrative of who he is. He refused to participate in his own humiliation. And Denise was left standing there, in front of the cameras, in front of the audience, having to deal with the fact that her guest would rather walk off the set than continue talking to her. That is not a good look. No matter how she tries to spin it, no matter how much she tries to blame him for being too sensitive or too difficult or too whatever, the fact remains that she treated him so poorly that he felt he had no choice but to leave. Think about that. Ralph Fiennes has done hundreds, maybe thousands of interviews over his long career. He has been asked tough questions before. He has been challenged before. He has dealt with aggressive interviewers and awkward situations. But this was different. This was not tough questions. This was not challenging. This was personal attacks disguised as conversation. This was a host using her platform to demean and belittle a guest for no reason other than her own ego, and he was not going to stand for it. When she said, "All I did was ask you a few questions," she was lying. And everyone watching knew it. She did not ask a few questions. She made accusations. She suggested he was mentally disturbed. She mocked his responses. She talked over him and over her fellow hosts. She created a hostile environment and then acted surprised when he responded to that hostility. This is gaslighting. This is what abusive people do. They mistreat you and then act like you are crazy for being upset about it. They make you question your own reality, your own feelings, your own perception of what just happened. But Ralph did not fall for it. He knew what she was doing, and he was not going to let her rewrite the story. When he said, "This was a mistake, I should not have come here," he was not being dramatic. He was being honest. It was a mistake. He should not have come to a place where the host was more interested in creating drama than in having a conversation. He should not have trusted that he would be treated with basic decency and respect. And the saddest part is that he probably will not do shows like this anymore. Not because he cannot handle them, but because he should not have to. Someone of his caliber, someone of his talent and experience and professionalism, should not have to sit on a couch and defend his basic humanity to someone who clearly has no interest in listening. The entertainment industry is full of these moments. Celebrities being ambushed on talk shows, actors being asked inappropriate questions, people being put in uncomfortable situations for the sake of ratings. But usually, they smile through it. They laugh it off. They play along. Because that is what you are supposed to do. That is what is expected. Ralph broke that expectation. He said, "No, I will not play along. I will not pretend this is okay. I will not sacrifice my dignity for your entertainment." And that takes courage, real courage, because he knew what would happen. He knew the headlines would focus on him walking off. He knew people would call him difficult or temperamental or sensitive. He knew Denise would spin it to make herself look like the victim. But he did it anyway, because some things are more important than public perception. Some things are more important than keeping up appearances. Some things are worth standing up for, even when it is difficult. Respect is one of those things. Self-worth is one of those things. The right to be treated like a human being, not a punching bag, is one of those things. Ralph Fiennes walked off that set because he understood something that many people forget. You teach people how to treat you. If you accept bad behavior, if you tolerate disrespect, if you smile and nod when someone is insulting you, then you are telling them that it is okay, that they can keep doing it, that there are no consequences. But if you stand up, if you set boundaries, if you walk away when those boundaries are crossed, then you are teaching a different lesson. You are saying, "I matter. My time matters. My dignity matters. And I will not accept anything less than basic respect." This is a lesson that everyone should learn. Not just celebrities, not just actors, everyone. You do not have to sit there and take abuse from anyone. Not from a boss, not from a family member, not from a friend, not from a talk show host, not from anyone. You have the right to say, "This is not okay," and remove yourself from the situation. You have the right to protect your own peace, your own mental health, your own sense of self. And if people call you difficult for doing that, if they say you are too sensitive or cannot take a joke or are being dramatic, then those are not your people. Those are not people who have your best interests at heart. Those are people who want to control you, who want to keep you small, who want you to accept mistreatment so they do not have to change their behavior. Ralph knew this, and he acted on it. The moment he stood up, the moment he started removing that microphone, he reclaimed his power. Not in an aggressive way, not in a hostile way, but in a quiet, firm, unmistakable way. He was saying, "I am done. I gave you a chance. I tried to have a conversation, but you are not interested in that. You are interested in tearing me down, and I will not participate." And Denise panicked. You could see it. When she said, "You cannot just walk off. We are live." She was trying to regain control. She was trying to make him feel bad for disrupting her show. She was trying to use the fact that they were on live television as a reason he should stay and continue to be insulted. But it did not work. Because Ralph understood that being on live television did not mean he had to accept mistreatment. It did not mean he had forfeited his right to dignity. It did not mean he owed her anything. He owed her nothing. And he gave her exactly that. When he said, "I can and I am," in response to her saying he could not walk off, it was one of the most powerful moments of the entire exchange. 3 simple words: calm, firm, final. He was not asking for permission. He was not negotiating. He was not explaining himself. He was simply stating a fact. He could leave, and he was leaving, and there was nothing she could do about it. That is what real power looks like. Not yelling, not threatening, not making a scene. Just calmly, quietly, standing up for yourself and following through. The other host who tried to stop him, who said, "Ralph, please, let us just take a breath and start over." She meant well, but she was asking him to do something unreasonable. She was asking him to give Denise another chance to disrespect him. She was asking him to pretend that what just happened did not happen. She was asking him to put the show, the segment, the production ahead of his own well-being. And Ralph, very kindly, very gently, said no. He thanked her. He acknowledged that she was trying to help, but he also made it clear that starting over was not an option. Because the problem was not a misunderstanding that could be cleared up. The problem was Denise, and her behavior, and her approach. And no amount of taking breaths or starting over was going to change that. When he said, "This was a mistake. I should not have come here," he was not blaming himself. He was simply acknowledging reality. He had made a calculation that this would be a normal interview. That calculation was wrong. And now he was correcting his mistake by leaving. This is mature. This is self-aware. This is someone who understands that sometimes you make wrong choices, and the best thing to do is acknowledge that and change course, not double down, not stick it out just because you feel like you have to, but make a different choice. Ralph made the choice to leave, and it was the right choice. As he walked toward the studio doors, Denise called after him one more time. "This is ridiculous. You are being ridiculous. All I did was ask you a few questions. If you cannot handle that, maybe you should not be doing interviews." This was her last attempt to control the narrative, to make him the problem, to make herself the victim of his oversensitivity. But Ralph did not take the bait. He paused for just a second, considered responding, and then kept walking, because he understood that anything he said at that point would just give her more ammunition, would just extend the conflict, would just play into her hands. So he said nothing. He just left. And his silence was louder than any words could have been. It said, "You are not worth my energy. You are not worth my time. You are not worth another second of my attention." And that must have stung more than any insult or comeback ever could. Because Denise wants attention. She wants reaction. She wants drama. That is what she feeds on. That is what keeps her relevant. But Ralph gave her nothing. Just his back as he walked away. Just the sound of the studio door closing behind him. Just the image of an empty seat where he used to be sitting. And she was left there, standing in front of the cameras, trying to figure out how to spin this. Trying to figure out how to make herself look like anything other than what she was. A bully who pushed too far and paid the price. The audience did not know how to react. Some clapped, probably thinking it was planned. Others sat in silence, knowing it was not. The other hosts looked lost, scrambling to figure out how to fill the rest of the segment. And Denise just stood there, watching the door he had walked through, with an expression that was hard to read but easy to understand. She had lost. Not the argument, not the debate, the whole thing. She had lost the respect of her guest, the respect of her audience, maybe even the respect of her fellow hosts. She had lost because she had chosen cruelty over kindness, ego over empathy, drama over decency. And Ralph had won, not by arguing, not by fighting back, but by simply refusing to participate in his own degradation. That is the real story here. Not that a celebrity walked off a talk show, but that a human being stood up for himself when he was being mistreated. That a professional artist refused to let his work and his character be mocked and belittled. That a good person said, "Enough," and meant it. This moment will be remembered, not because it was shocking or scandalous, but because it was real, it was honest. It was someone drawing a line and refusing to let that line be crossed. And maybe, just maybe, it will inspire other people to do the same. To stand up when they are being disrespected. To walk away when a situation becomes toxic, to value themselves enough to say, "I deserve better than this," because everyone does deserve better. Everyone deserves to be treated with basic human decency. Everyone deserves to have their boundaries respected. Everyone deserves to exist in spaces where they are not being attacked or diminished or made to feel less than. Ralph Fiennes understood this, and on that day, in that moment, he showed the world what it looks like to truly respect yourself. He did not yell. He did not curse. He did not throw things or make threats or create a scene. He just stood up, took off his microphone, and walked away. And sometimes, that is the bravest thing you can do.